21 months. Well, 5 months here in the States, I don't know, a little over a year, I guess, year and a half. They put me in a tank battalion, which is on that CD I'm going to give you, but in the medical corps. And we just went on maneuvers, and we had some time. When we had time off, a lot of these Southern kids would go back to Greenville, North Carolina, or South Carolina, wherever it is, to be with their girlfriends. I would go with one or two other guys, and we'd go to Paris, go look at Paris.
In Germany, you're meeting all these people from the South, people you've never met before. You're in Germany, which is a very, very foreign country. And it's also, there's a bit of World War II, I think, there too.
Well, we're on an army base and everybody spoke English. You didn't have to learn German except if you went to town.
Did you?
Yeah, but I didn't hang out in beer halls. If I went to town, I went to a restaurant. If I drank 2 glasses of beer in Germany in a year, I drank a lot. I didn't drink. Didn't date any of the local Frauleins. I would go to the library. I remember once there was a concert in Munich, and there was a little sign up, and I went to the concert. It was directed by a young protege named Ferruccio Burco. I'd never heard of him. But on the bus going to town, there were 3 or 4 officers and a couple of women officers and 1 or 2 enlisted men. I can't say that I was snobbish, but what the hell would I want to go to town for and drink beer and date Frauleins? I wasn't, so I went to do that. Went in Germany, and I took another week off. One of the neighbors in Ridgewood in Queens was a young gal who went to visit relatives in Germany. And we contacted, I don't remember how, and she was visiting them in the Black Forest area. So I took the train and met them there, and met her family there. Of course, she spoke English, and all the family spoke German, and I knew just a few words, Guten Tag, and the Bahnhof, and Schlafen, and Essen, and that was a nice experience. When we went to Paris, I went with a guy from California who was a weightlifter, guy, big, strong fella, and we had, I don't know, 2 weeks. I don't remember how much time, a week, or whatever it was, short leave. I said, let's go to Paris. And I would tell these guys, you're in Europe, why don't you go to London or go to Paris? Man, I want to see my girlfriend back home. Okay, you can always see her, but... And then one of those trips was to Italy, where I met the relatives in Padua, which changed my life because I then decided I'd go to medical school there. But also, I went all the way down to Sicily, and I carried a reel-to-reel tape recorder that must have weighed 40 pounds with me. And I tape recorded their conversations, and then I would take these little reels and I would send them back to the States, where they had a tape recorder back home, and they would play the reels, and they would listen to my parents would listen to their brothers and sisters talk. In fact, I still have those reels downstairs. I wonder if they still play.
How old were you in the Army when you were in Germany?
Well, I got drafted in '53, 21.
Okay. What was it 22. Like going back for the first time to Italy and going to Sicily and meeting all those people that your father and your grandfather had told you about?
Yeah, well, I knew them already because of the conversations and from the pictures. But when I saw them, they were obviously now real, and they were people, and they loved the hell out of me. And they called me Dino because it was Leonardino, little Leonard. And I met all my cousins who just were all over me because it's the L'Americano coming over to visit us. And I enjoyed being with them. And they told them I liked rice. And so they made rice for me. But I liked rice the way we make it in the States, which is rice and soup. They made a rice which you could use to plaster holes in sheetrock with. Oh, man alive. And some of their customs were a little bit different. And but I got used to them, and they meant well with everything they did.
But how did you feel about the experience of going home in many ways.
Well, even though I knew it was going home and that I was born there, it was my first visit there, actually. I didn't remember anything about being 2½. You know, I remember nothing of that. So it was going there for the first time, but I now saw face to face people whose pictures I had seen and whose voice I had never heard. And it was a little strange. I couldn't remember who the heck was who. You know, she had alive 8 brothers and sisters. Well, maybe only 7 were there at the time, but they had all married and had kids, so there were innumerable cousins and all. And because I don't talk to them anymore like I did for that short period of time, I have to think whose child is whose named who, and now that they're mature and grown up, I don't even recognize some of them. My brother is better able to do it because he goes down there a couple of times a year, and so he knows them better than I do.
One of the things that came up over and over again when we were interviewing people on Saturday was the feeling of family.
Yeah.
And I'm only guessing what it must have felt like for you.
Yeah, it was. I grew up without grandparents in the States. Everybody had grandmas and grandpas. I didn't have any. I didn't know what it would have been like to have them, but when I got there, it felt great to be among them. And they were all students, you know, they were all going to school. Not too many of them were going to become farmers. And I felt that we had a more advanced technological life, and we did. We had more things, more cars, refrigerators, washing machines, dryers, and all that sort of stuff. That doesn't make, it gives a quality of life experience a boost, but it doesn't make life more worthwhile. Things that make life worthwhile are loving and being loved in return. Don't care whether your pants have a crease down the middle or not. And so the things that are worthwhile, you could have anywhere, even without any monetary trappings. The initial meeting was at a fellow classmate of mine who became an orthopedic surgeon. He was from Port Chester, New York. His name was Frank Lavallo. His wife, Terry, her dad, was friends with Jane's aunt. And they mentioned that Jane was studying in Padova. She was studying music. And she was living at a place run by some nuns, the name of which escapes me right now. And she went to visit this gal who was married to the fella that was a classmate of mine. And because their cousins worked together or knew each other, the father of one of them knew the aunt of Jane's aunt. So when I met her there, I was so quickly attracted to her. I thought she was a beautiful young lady. She was at the time 22, I think. And we started talking. The initial meeting was one where I expressed a comment which I thought she wouldn't understand because I thought she was Italian, and I said, "Who is this broad?" And but we got over that hump, and then we started talking. It turns out that she lived in the same parish I did, back in Brooklyn, of all places, that she attended school 4 years before my brother, same grammar school, St. Martin of Tours Grammar School. And but they didn't know each other. And she was, I think she had gotten semi-serious with somebody out here on Long Island, but wanted to break it off, and so they figured taking a break by going to school in Italy, music school, would be a good way to separate herself from that. And so I met her there. We went on a few dates while there, and I became interested in continuing the relationship. And we continued it, got engaged. I'm not sure if it was the following year or the year after that.
How'd you ask her to marry you?
You know, I don't remember as such. I think we just got into a relationship where we sort of understood that that's what was going to happen. I don't specifically remember asking her to marry me, and in fact, I think maybe it was understood more on her part than mine. I just don't remember. I do remember going to Manhattan, buying a ring which we had appraised by somebody at Macy's, and we got engaged, and we had an engagement party, pictures of which are somewhere around here, and of course a lot of people were invited. It was held at her house in Levittown.
Tell me about the wedding.
Yeah, well, what happened was I was in Italy, and they did all the preparations here in the States, and we got married at the Huntington Townhouse, at which subsequently all my kids, except Nick, who had the wedding in Colorado, had the reception at the Huntington Townhouse, same place. We tried to get the same room, actually, and we went back there for our 25th wedding anniversary, same room. It was an affair with 220 people, and the relatives from New Jersey, my wife's relatives, rented a bus, and they got on a tour bus, and I don't know, 30 of them, I don't remember how many of them came. Must have been easy, 30, 40, maybe more. Well, if we had 200 there, it could easily have been 30 or 40 of them came on a tour bus. They arrived at the church, and the tour bus opened up, and I said, that's hilarious. We then took a short ride out to eastern Long Island after the wedding, and then we left on the Queen Mary for the return trip to Italy. We went through Paris, and we spent a couple of days in Paris, and then took the train all the way to Padua, and we got a little apartment, rented a little apartment, and that was 1 year there. That was where, at that point, I had a Vespa, and Jane wanted to ride the Vespa. I said, it's not as easy as you think. It's not a bike. It's a big, heavy, it's a motorcycle in weight. So we bought a Fiat Topolino, which, if I remember, cost us, wasn't very expensive, maybe $300. Well, that was the Vespa, but the Topolino was a Cinquecento, and it looked like a regular car with a regular hood and then a body in the back. It was a coupe. And I remember one day it was misfiring a little bit, and we took it to a local mechanic, pulled into his shop, and he was working on a tank in another room that you could see, and I'm looking at him, and I said, the car's not firing well, it's rough on the idle. So he said, wait, and he goes over and he comes back with 4 spark plugs. He said, some fellow with an Alfa Romeo was just here, and he wanted to change his plugs. And these plugs are perfectly good. So he cleaned them and regapped them, took our plugs out, put the 4 plugs in, and the car ran beautifully. I said, how much do I owe? He said, well, it really didn't cost me anything, so I'm not going to charge you anything. And in addition, he gave my wife a rose that was on a bouquet that was on the table. I said, boy, that's terrific. I said, what a great story. She didn't have a problem. She had a bit of a weight problem, always trying to lose weight. Well, most women are. And a lot of men are too, in fact. But she didn't exercise very much. Her diet wasn't too great. Eventually she developed adult diabetes, and she was taking the pills for a while, and then she needed to take the insulin, which helped her quite a bit, kept her diabetes under control. There was cardiac history in the family, and At one point, we didn't take much in the way of vacations. Pediatricians don't earn a lot of money, and I couldn't afford to not earn and spend at the same time. I was alone in practice. So I'd say, you know, for me to take 2 weeks off, it cost me $10,000 with what I spend on vacation and what I don't earn in the practice, and $10,000 goes a long way towards the tuition. 4 kids in Catholic high school and 4 kids then in college at the same time, and then of 2 more in professional school. So we never took off more than 2 weeks. We often went on medical conferences with a bunch of our friends, obstetricians, orthopedists. We all went together. We hardly went to any of the classes, but we all enjoyed our company. And that's all I ever took. 2 weeks was the most vacation I ever took in all that time.